How's it going, everyone? It's Artifact. Today we're going to make a snowbound bass. Now the reason why I've called it snowbound is because I used to play this game called Halo 3 and there was a level called snowbound and you could pincer your opponent by getting your teammate and yourself. You get a shotgun, you go each side of the shield door, one shotguns them in the front and one shotguns them in the back. What we're doing with this bass is we're doing like a double shotgun effect. It's going to be a different start to the bass and then it's going to end differently as well, and I think this bass is actually really wicked. I'm quite happy with this one that I've just made. So it's like an evolution on the snow growl that I started off with, but if we just have a listen to this loop that I've made now. Basically a finished track already, isn't it? No, not really, but it's pretty damn good. There's a lot of nice textures in there, and again, all I've done is I've re-chopped up these Laut samples, which are the ones that I really recommend. I'm affiliated with them as well. Link down below, and if you type in my code Laut Artifact, you save money as well if you buy them, and they're really cheap. Quality is wicked. Carrying on with the Vital patch, so I can teach you some more sound design stuff. So I just went into the old snow growl patch and I just started moving and changing things. And the first thing I did was I slowed the hell out of all the LFOs. So I've just had like one like really long, like slow moving sound. So if we have a listen, that is far too low. So that's kind of what it is. It just like, there's these slow movements on it now. Everything that was fast and groovy before, I've just put it onto a slower speed to start off with. And then there's a few cool things that I've just figured out as well. So big shout out to the Fips who commented saying the SP display on the oscillator is a spectral view. On the very left bass frequency, the warping modes operate on the spectrum and not on the waveform directly, so you can get a better intuition of what they do if you look at the effect in spectrum mode. So I've changed everything to spectrum mode here, and I was looking at this while I was playing with these modes on the left. So these ones here will directly affect this spectrum. As you can see here, you know, if I change this note, you can see kind of what it's doing to the waveform. So that's quite useful if you want a sort of visual representation. But again, you should be using your ears, so it's not the most important thing to look at all these. Actually, the best thing about this synth and the visual aspects of it is you can see like a long, if you want to draw in like a certain kind of pattern of groove or something that happens maybe just once, you can just really map it here. So you see here what I've done. I'll go into this a little bit later, but back to the matter at hand. What we're doing with this RM sample is we're ring modulating this sine wave here into the sampler section, and I've just got this setting on grinding, so it's kind of like a noise, and just by applying a really small amount of ring modulation, I've left the level off so we don't actually hear the sample on its own. But if we just listen separately, you see how we just get this kind of little level of noise over the top, but it's ring modulated in so that they're timesing each other together, the sounds, so they kind of feel a bit more glued and gelled together. I think it makes a bit of a difference when you sort of ring modulate or frequency modulate a bit of noise into one of the oscillators. I've definitely done it a lot of times before, so I'm pretty sure it's a good tactique. Anyway, there's a lot going on this synth. It's really nice and growly. Again, obviously this preset will be available on Patreon if you want it. Then what I've done here in the effects mode is where things start to get a bit interesting, because you can hear the beginning of the sound is very different, and then it kind of changes and like goes into like a long growl, but there's kind of like a stab at the beginning. And what I've done to emphasize this is I've used this formant filter, which is kind of gives it a vocal kind of sound, like just at the beginning of the hit. So you can see these kind of vocal resonances here. If I turn that up, you can hear like it's that kind of vocal filter. But I've just used it a little bit, and then I've tracked it to the LFO so that we have this at the beginning, but then as the bass line progresses, it fades away. So it's just like a bit of a vocal filter like hit at the very beginning of the sound. And this is kind of like the first shotgun that I was talking about, because it's doing this first, and then suddenly, you know, there's a shotgun, and it's like another like sort of part to the bass line starts. So it's kind of in two halves. And what actually makes this bass line really cool in this patch is actually the MIDI that I've programmed in as well. So I've done a lot of kind of like different pitch bends and things like that. But there's one other thing on this synth that is really cool, and is what I was referring to earlier, was this, I set up another LFO, and I wanted to have like one part to the sound where when I'm holding it down, I'm trying to get a lot of different modulations and grooves happening at various points throughout the sound, so that it like kind of, just gets a bit more groovy. And so one way that I've done this is I've used distortion, right? Because distortion's really cool. I've used it in a way where it's only coming in during this one part, so I'm using it as a rhythmic effect. So it's normally not distorted, and then you get this one little bit where it goes with distortion, and the distortion just like brings everything out a bit more, so it adds like a dynamic edge and groove in this section. So if we listen, and you can watch along the line like when it happens, so it goes like it's a subtle thing. And I've timed it, you know, I've left it on purposely sort of just after this kind of grid, so it's a bit offbeat. And if you listen to it in context of the tune, it gives like that kind of really nice funky little groove to it. So I think that's a really decent little tip on this one. And then what I've quickly done as well is I copied the patch over and I made a second version. And on this second version, I've actually automated the volume, so the beginning part we don't actually hear. So basically I don't get that first shotgun effect that the other bass was doing the second time round, because I just want the response part on this section of the song. And I've applied a couple of different effects on this one. There's only two things that are different. It's there's a phaser on this time, which is which comes in like more over time. So as the sound progresses, it gets like a bit more phasey and a bit washy, and that just kind of having that on the response section, it means when we go back to the first bass on the call again, like that one has like more impact because it's like kind of phased out a bit, and then we drop back into a less phased, more like consistent sound design. And the other main thing I've done here, you can hit the effect you can really hear quite drastically is, again, it's with the distortion, but instead of doing it this time with a singular kind of spike just to add groove, I've left it on the whole like bass line, and I've done it at really fast speed. So we're using the mix, we're mapping it to the LFO to give like a really, really fast stuttered distortion up and down movement, which is giving it that staccato feel. But then what I've done, because I didn't want it on the whole time as you hold down the note, so I've then tracked one of my slow LFOs that are doing all the other movements to the smoothness of this LFO. So basically, fast LFO becomes smoother and smoother out as we go along, and that basically means you just hear the effect less, essentially. It's kind of just like, almost like a mix knob from what I can tell. So you hear as it goes up, you know, right at the beginning we have that fast staccato, and then as the smooth gets turned up, it kind of that effect kind of stops, and we just go into the normal like one note held down bass. And so yeah, when you put them both together, that is a pretty nice little loop we've got here. So yeah, I'm thinking I probably would use this in a track, to be fair. It's probably one of my best presets I've made so far, I reckon. Anyway, peace out.